This is Journey Through Iran, Episode 10, written by Abdulmaalik Hashmi and read by Sonia. An argument with a Baloch boy. The cold attitude of Maulana Nazir Ahmed Salami still weighed on me like an unwanted shadow over my journey. After spending a few moments in the unfamiliar atmosphere of Zahedan, I decided to keep myself busy. I planned to buy a map of Iran from a nearby stationery shop. The heat was intense. Everything felt slow and tired under the sun. As I walked along the wide footpath, I saw a thin Baloch boy sitting under a tree. In front of him was an earthen pot, and he held a shiny steel glass in his hand. He looked like someone who had been sitting there for ages, waiting silently with water for thirsty travelers. As I came closer, he silently handed me the glass of water. In the burning heat of Zahedan, the water felt like a gift. I looked at him with gratitude, took the glass, and drank it all in one go. The coolness spread through my body like relief after long thirst. I smiled at him and was about to walk away when a flat, emotionless voice stopped me. "1 toman." I turned back in surprise. "1 toman? For water." This was the first time in my life someone had asked for money in return for a glass of water. I thought maybe he was joking, but his face was serious. He was asking for payment without any sign of humor. "You're selling water?" I asked, still surprised. "Yes," he said simply. I paused. I had always heard that offering water was a kind act, a charitable deed. Someone who gave water to the thirsty was thought to earn blessings. But here was a boy asking for the price of his effort. He wanted payment for the coolness he offered. I thought to myself, who sells water? If it was juice, maybe it made sense. In my country, Pakistan, we put clay pots of water under trees for free. Giving water was seen as a good deed, a sign of kindness and culture. But times had changed. Like many other things, water had also become a product. In copying the West, we began selling bottled water, and soon many companies started treating water as a business. I shrugged and turned to leave. Just then, the boy kicked my suitcase. Shocked and a bit angry, I pushed him lightly in return. Like a small wild goat, he jumped up and pushed me back. For a moment, I feared this might turn into a real fight. Then I put my hand in my pocket, took out 1 toman, and gave it to him. He took the money with a look of victory and sat back near his pot as if nothing had happened. I looked at him for a moment, then moved on. It was just a small argument in the hot streets of Zahedan, but it left a lasting thought in my mind. Travel isn't only about moving through places. It's also about meeting people and seeing new sides of life. It teaches you lessons that no book or teacher ever could. And today, in the dusty streets of Zahedan, I learned something new, that sometimes, 1 toman is not just a coin, but the price of a completely different way of thinking. The next step. After the small argument with the boy, I felt a little heavy-hearted. But for a traveler, such ups and downs were not unusual. I walked to a nearby stationery shop and bought a map of Iran. The map showed a maze of roads, unfamiliar city names, and a country I had yet to explore. Back at the hotel, I spread the map on the table. As I looked at the lines and shapes, I began to feel like I was the main character in a story that was about to begin, a journey that I myself was about to write. I stared at the paper for a while, and then a strange idea came to my mind. What if I crossed Iran in the shape of a circle? What if I could walk through the cities, the streets, the markets, and the tea houses like a quiet breeze passing through the branches of a tree? There was no help from Google Maps, no YouTube videos, no guidebook in hand, and no advice from a seasoned traveler. Only a simple paper map in Persian, which now seemed to be my guiding light. This decision was not based on deep thought or planning. It came from a kind of inner excitement, a joy only known to wanderers. I had only 10,000 rupees with me and a strong wish to see as much of Iran as possible. I wanted to walk through its streets, forts, riverbanks, and deserts, not like a tourist, but like someone chasing a dream. I let my eyes wander across the map. My finger stopped at a place called Bam. That would be my next stop, a historic city, known for its old forts and mud-colored walls, standing quietly with stories from long ago. And so, the roads on paper began to take shape in the real world. I was about to take the first step toward a dream that had been waiting for me in the streets of Iran. Bam, sand, palm trees, and a strange city. And so, I sat in the bus, heading toward the city of Bam like chasing an unfamiliar dream. The engine roared in the usual way, and the bus moved steadily. The windows were shut, the air conditioner was on, but the heat from the sun still found its way in through the glass. I had a window seat, so the warmth felt stronger. The outside world looked like a faded picture through the dusty glass, almost like a golden haze. Most passengers around me were either half asleep or lost in their thoughts. Just before reaching Bam, the bus stopped in front of a mosque. In Iran, this is common. Buses and trains often stop at prayer times, as if time itself pauses for a sacred moment. The prayer schedule was interesting, Fajr on its own, but Zuhar and Asr together, and then Maghrib and Isha combined. This arrangement was new to me, but it did not feel strange. When I stepped out of the mosque after the prayer, I looked around and was surprised by the scene. For a moment, I wondered, was I in Iran or in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia? The hot winds, the palm trees, the dry earth, it all looked very familiar. But there was one clear difference. The people here were polite, respectful, and well-mannered. In Saudi Arabia, if someone brushes your shoulder, they might glare at you. Here, everything felt calm and composed. After the prayer break, the bus resumed its journey and soon dropped me off just outside the entrance of Bam. The bus then quietly continued toward Tehran, and I stood alone in front of an arched gateway. It reminded me of the Mughal-era forts I had seen before. In Iran, such archways and tall doors are common, like old guardians of history, welcoming visitors and whispering stories of the past. Most cities in Iran are now surrounded by large bypass roads where long-distance buses stop. The bus driver, who also acted as the conductor, came down silently, carefully placed my luggage on the ground, looked at me one last time from the window, and drove away. I looked around. It was nothing like the noisy bus stations of Lahore. No vendors shouting, no taxi drivers pulling at my clothes trying to get a passenger. People were calm and respectful, each busy in their own thoughts. I walked to a nearby taxi and said something in Persian, which probably sounded like Urdu. The driver smiled and said, "This city is very beautiful. You will like it." We agreed on a fare of 200 tomans, about 17 rupees. I asked him to take me to a cheap but clean hotel. On the way, the sights of Bam held my attention. The roads were wide, with tall trees on both sides that gave shade. Everything felt calm and peaceful. This did not feel like an ordinary city, it felt like I had stepped into an old storybook. The taxi stopped in front of a building. It was not a hotel, but a rest house. I went inside. The man in charge quietly took my passport, placed it in a drawer, and then asked me to write my name in a register. He took out a key and walked me to a room. Inside the room were 4 simple but clean beds. The walls were plain, no odd pictures or stains. The air had a fresh scent of Iranian detergent, something common in hotels here. I was reminded of hotels in Pakistan, where the pillows often have greasy marks and the walls are dotted with red stains from chewing tobacco. But here, everything was neat and well organized. I sat on the bed, took off my shoes, and closed my eyes for a moment. Bam, a city I had only heard about, was now right in front of me. A place made of sand, wind, palm trees, and many years of history. Bam, an oasis in the desert. Bam is a city in the Kerman province of Iran. It feels like an oasis surrounded by the golden sand of the desert. Under the shade of palm trees, one can almost hear the quiet stories of travelers who once stopped here to rest. The city gives the impression of being the final stop of an ancient caravan, a place where travelers pause, reflect, and walk into the quiet mystery of its date orchards. When I arrived in Bam, the heat welcomed me. This was not ordinary heat, it was the same dry and powerful sun that had burned this land for centuries, sometimes forcing travelers to change their path. Compared to Zahedan, where the heat had still felt tolerable, Bam's temperature felt like walking into a burning furnace. Yet the people here do not just live with the heat, they live through it. They grow crops in this weather, and their date palms and orange trees spread their fragrance even in the hot winds. The distance between Zahedan and Bam is about 331 kilometers. By bus, the journey takes around 3.5 to 4 hours. When I stepped into this old city, I had no idea that 2 years later, in 2003, the ground beneath Bam would shift, and the entire city would collapse. Streets, markets, and buildings that had stood for centuries would be buried in rubble. Bam has a long history. It is mentioned in the travel writings of Ibn Hokal, in his book Surat al-Od. The most famous historical site here was the Arg-e Bam, a large mud brick fortress that had stood silently for generations. It was known for its calm, strong walls that seemed to listen to the passage of time. In 2003, this fortress was also destroyed in a moment when the earth shook. Bam is not just a historical city. Its land is fertile. Its dates, especially the ones grown in nearby areas, are known in both Iran and Pakistan for their shine and sweetness. But what interested me most were the qanats, the underground water channels that bring life to the desert land. They reminded me of the car-ice systems I saw in my childhood in Sheikh Manda, a village near Quetta. Those half-dark tunnels, where we children used to explore, chasing light that came through tiny cracks, those memories came rushing back. That light, shining into the dark, often felt like a small sign of hope. Bam was a farming town, but its roads also told another story. Groups of European tourists often came here on large motorcycles. They came to see the ancient fortress with their own eyes. They brought foreign currency, and in a country where sanctions often limit the economy, their money helped keep things moving. Their loud bikes, their easy laughter, and their bright clothing brought a different energy to the quiet streets of Bam. They may have been strangers to the region, but they too seemed to fall under the city's quiet charm.